Hello there, everybody. Welcome on in. It is good to see you. I hope you're doing really well. My name is Jenna O'Malley. Welcome to Self-Editing A.R.M.O.R.S. I hope you're having a really good week. If you want to join me, there is a pinned link in the description box or the chat box for those of you who are live or on the replay. Welcome on in. It is so good to see you. I hope you're doing well. We're going to go ahead and get started on today's workshop. If you check the description box below, you'll find a link to a conversation I had with Emma Dhesi of Be a Bestseller 6.0 about a week or so ago, I think it was. And this is the full-blown workshop that pertains to that interview. So I hope you're doing well. Let's get started. So kind of the agenda for the workshop: what's the higher level revisions portion of it versus the lower level revisions portion, why self-edit, why keep it seemingly basic. I'll address why some of you are probably like, I've heard of this before as an elementary school, middle, and high school student. And then we'll actually get to the checklist, which should be linked about in the boxes proper. Hello, Weaver of Words. It's good to see you. Hello, Miranda. Neither of the links are working. Uh-oh. Let me go fix that right now. That is good to know. Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Miranda. I do apologize for that, everyone. Thank you for testing and letting me know. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get that fixed for us right away. Oh, goodness. That's my copy of the file. It's like, there's the copy. Where's the original? Okay. So, share. All right. Miranda, would you mind trying again for me, please? Same link. I just went ahead and gave it access. I apologize, everybody. We know how the tech gremlins can be in these parts. Same link should work. Yay, thank you. So it is working. Tech gremlins, they like to trip us up when we're not expecting it, right? Right. So on with the agenda then. Most of you here do know me and kind of who I is. So if you want to know more about my services, there's also a link in the description box for you. As far as all my books and my editing and coaching would be there too. So higher level revisions. This is where I think a lot of people get confused between what is a revision, what is an edit. Like, most of us know that proofreading is the final polish at the tail end, but a lot of us aren't always sure what's a revision, what's an edit. For me, as an editor, and this dates back even to being an English teacher, a writing coach, and writing tutoring, even when I was back doing that in high school and college, you do the higher order revisions first. These are your organizational things. In my opinion, what's the point of touching grammar if you might heavily edit or rewrite that entire paragraph? These are what some people would chunk into developmental edits. You might relocate them elsewhere and thus have to rework a transition into and out of it, should it not be natural for it to appear in the new format. And furthermore, you might have plot holes. You might have to go back and do more research. A lot of people tend to think of the writing process as A, B, C, D, publish, A, B, C, D, publish. Not always. If you are lucky enough to iron out your systems to support you to where you are able to do that, kudos to you. But even if a project does give you a crossfire and kind of make you go, wait a minute, this isn't working, instead of thinking of your process as linear, maybe it's okay for a project or two to treat it like a cycle. sometimes in the revision phases, the higher level revision phases, we have to go back and do more research. Been there, done that. Sometimes what we originally thought would work does not make sense, or doesn't push the reader's suspension of disbelief as far as other parts of previous connected projects might be. Hello, my serialized writing author friends. So research, do it, update it. Maybe you have character perspectives you want to delete. For those of you who remember my book 1 way back when I first published it, there was an entirely other POV that got hacked from that book, and it kind of actually worked out for the betterment of the whole series that I did. So sometimes we, in the early stages of not necessarily the beginning of our author journey, but maybe in the pivot into a new project, make these stumbles and sometimes have to redefine our voice, because we've got to look at consistency of that across branding, of course, right? Right. At the end of the day, what's the point of doing grammar and so on if these developmental revisions persist anywhere in the manuscript? So a lot of clients I've worked with over the last couple of years have been like, I hired a copy editor and they found a ton of developmental edit issues. Well, then now you know that you have a weakness there to address, not necessarily a way to punish yourself, but it is maybe something that you need to polish and refine and get better at as you write more books, which most authors do anyway, to be fair. So why self-edit? Ultimately, self-editing saves money and time for you, your editors, and your beta readers. Even if you don't hire them, you can use this checklist. Even if you do hire them, you can use this checklist, okay? It kind of addresses both of them as part of the A.R.M.O.R.S setup. It's a good way to help you decide if you need a critique partner, to help you learn how to better edit along the way. Normally, if you find a critique partner or beta readers, hopefully, especially if they are other authors, they have strengths that are your weaknesses and you can learn from them along the way. And you also can see solutions through the eyes of other people by learning your own writing stronger. Saying this as an English teacher, a lot of us learned English in a vacuum. Here, have this worksheet. Go do this grammar exercise. Reading comprehension, do this. You really don't learn much about your own writing voice until after you have spent years consuming other people's content. And even then, a lot of English teachers have been this teacher, depending on the school I was at and what I was told I could and could not do. We're not allowed to get into more descriptive writing tactics. Here in author world, I can tell you, you don't have to be so prescriptive. What you learned in high school and college is a great foundation, but some of it's going to work for you, some of it is not going to work for you. Same applies here with the editing and deciding not only do you need to outsource, hint, that's the O in A.R.M.O.R.S, but who to outsource it with, okay? So keep it basic. That's why I went with an acronym that a lot of my fantasy authors are going to recognize. In my interview with Emma and in a lot of client situations where we've talked about this, I equate it to you get dressed in the morning a certain way and it might not be the same for another person. I might do both my socks and then put on my shoes. You may do one leg and then the other. Okay, some people like to put on their t-shirts and stuff first. Some people like to put on their pants first. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. You're still dressed at the end of the day, hopefully appropriately to your situation. The same thing here applies with the self-editing A.R.M.O.R.S. Are you always going to start at the A? No. Sometimes you don't need to start there. You will eventually, after doing a couple of projects, be able to look at a project in and of its own essence and say, you are weak in this area. Let me start there, or put it at the end and make it the last thing I address, depending on what your time constraints and needs are for the project. Ultimately, you're looking to try and give yourself a sense of consistency across something that a lot of authors do not like to do. The analytical part of writing, aka ripping their own writing apart to polish it and make it gorgeous for the readers, as deservedly so. So this is the link. I believe all of us were like, link work, link work. So let me go ahead and grab that and switcheroony some tabs around for us. And I will join you all over there, basically. So when you copy it, you should have 200%, thank you, a document that looks kind of like this. I do give you a spiel at the top here that kind of goes with what I just gave you in 10 minutes. But ultimately, it is a checklist. A lot of them are the same. I'll tell you where the differences are and how you can adapt this to your own, okay? With adding, this is adding anything, dialogue, narrations, like maybe you didn't write a whole scene, totally guilty of doing like, I wrote this scene, put a note here, connect the dots later kind of stuff. Yeah, I got to go back and do that stuff. That sometimes for a lot of us are the places we're going to start, especially if we have those kind of fill in the gaps comments. Welcome on in, everyone. If you want to go ahead and join and grab with us, the link should be pinned or in the description box. Good to see you, Jody, Jean, and CJ. So I like to also remind people of a more academic, argumentative way of looking at suspension of disbelief, and that's reminding you to take it back to something that's really core to a lot of movie world building, and that's Aristotle's triangle. And that's going to be logos, logic, emotions, the pathology of the situation, as I like to call it. How sick and demented are you really making the monkey wrenches you throw at your characters from an emotional point of view? And, here's a heartstring. Oh my God, this heartstring lasts forever. Anyway, also you're looking at the ethics of the situation as well. Looking at all three of these not only makes sure that it's got some continuity and makes sense, hello logic, but also that it keeps your readers entertained ethically and emotionally, and possibly enough so to where they want to talk to other people about it. Hello, that's why we have book talk, booktube, and so on, because you really did good with that triangle in that book or not. Also, this is where we come out of movies, sometimes feeling like something was missing in the adding department of the ending was a little wonky. Normally it's because one of these three things either pulled you way too hard early in the movie and it couldn't pull you that hard a second time, or one of these three legs to that triangle just didn't get addressed enough at all in the end, and you're like, but something's missing. That's where the adding can come in and fill that suspension of disbelief. How willing are you going to get your readers to disengage from reality and revisit your books again and again and again? We did this with the heartstrings earlier for a reason. How much are they coming back for a second round on that roller coaster? Hopefully multiple times. And also, this is where you can get into, do I need a new POV added? Do I need to add in new chapters? Do I need to add in 2 more books? Thanks, Fry. Anyway, removing or relocating is going to be your first R. This is going to be logical, similar to adding, but does this dialogue fit better, in this order of lines? Because you kind of want the dialogue to be really what drives a lot of your discussions when there's a lot of people in the room. I've come across several authors who like to summarize conversations, and I'm like, but you just missed out on so much logos, ethos, and pathos by doing that potentially. It works for some genres and depending on your word length to do it that way. But for those of us who are writing the overwriting fiction-y stuffs in the fantasy realms and whatnots, we have 100,000 words to explore those things. Do you have any more heartstrings for people to pull on? Go check. You might be able to relocate them. Beth, hello, it's good to see you. If you want to go ahead and grab the link in the description box, or that's pinned, you'll be able to go ahead and join us. Miranda said you added 2 new POV in book 2 in one of your series. Yeah, and it probably helped you fill in some gaps, I would imagine. Big time. So also, are you removing or relocating a character perspective? This is how some of us get spin-off stories. This is why my big bad in season 1 is going to get his own book, because I had to take out a ton of content from a couple of books. and I have enough for it, so why not, right? Is kind of where the, don't reinvent the wheel kind of goes, and make your life a little bit easier if possible. As a former K-12 teacher, I'm all for not reinventing the wheel when possible and saving you some time and money. So moving, like removing or relocating, but maybe this one's going to go into future books more so. Like, do you have an entire new series that sprung up out of this? As in, this was a whole new book that that doesn't quite fit. I've had a couple of people say that they have little redheaded stepchildren books. It was supposed to be something else. Yeah, maybe it was meant to be moved to another universe or to another part of the timeline. These are things that you can ask yourself at anywhere, I would say, up until that first revision, and through that first revision process for yourself of, is this just making sense with the greater world I've already made? And how far left of center does it really belong when I'm moving it? Because removing can just be deleting. Moving can be like, you're going to go over to this neighborhood now. Ka-chunk. Outsourcing is one of my favorite ones. This is the one of, A, is this draft ready for other people's eyes yet? Whether or not I'm fearful of them reading it. My fear doesn't matter. Hello, fear. Goodbye is what you kind of need to say at one point or another, right? Right. And this is where you get to decide what order you're going to share it with people in. And even if you're going to use some of those cogs in those wheels. Critique partners, I haven't had one for years. I finally admitted to myself this last month, I may need a critique partner for my season 2. Beta readers, I've used them depending on the book. Hit or miss, right? Editors, hello! We're not all super expensive and mean, I promise. Alpha readers, are these going to be your ARC readers? Are these going to be people that you give a free book to? How do you get it to them? Is it autographed paperback? Is it ebook? Is it they get a version 1 and the public gets a version 2? You can start making those little tiny decisions of, even, do I have something like a Fourth Wall, Royal Road, something or other kind of readership membership going on? Do they get it first? Do they count as like my beta reader, alpha reader, whatever read in my line progressions? You can start making those super fan decisions then too. Researching. I like to send people on a research rabbit hole as much as possible, but with, as bowling alleys would have, bumper pad rails. So what 3 rabbit holes in this draft? If up to 3, you might need more, you might need none. That's okay. What can you research for it within a week? There is something to be said about assigning yourself a task and then committing to it by taking one small action in the near future on it, hence the week. Let's take that out a couple weeks and give you some continuous habitual action in the research department. Do you have any sources that just were wrong, did not work out, or for whatever reason caused plot issues? Will you use it for the next book if it's in a series? Will you ditch it all together from your notes? What needs to be added, i.e., say something happened and you loosey-gooseyed the research this time, make that part of your pre-planning for your next book, okay? Yes, as a serial writer, as a seasoned writer, as someone who likes to write the long, sprawling universes, I kind of gave you a setup to address it either or, but even someone who writes standalones could answer those questions in the same way. Say your standalones are all in military romance. Maybe you find some sources that were accurate a couple years ago on certain facets of those daily lives that have since been updated with new studies and research. Just by example. And then, of course, the S, substituting or swapping. You're looking at your B stories, your A stories here, okay? Which B stories need to be wrapped up or left hanging for another project. Hello, cliffhangers. B stories will then become A stories in the future of another book too, also matter. This is where a lot of the time, for those of us who like those long seasons, you'll see like in the second half of the book, you'll start seeing certain characters who will show up in the next book a little bit more often. They kind of get more airtime, if you understand my meaning. You're just making sure that those introductions are as warm to the audience, i.e., hey, I know this character, let's go hang out with them, they're a hoot. That's Frey. Or cold they are, aka Lee, who's been missing for a book and a half almost, it feels like. How well do they know that character? Getting into that character's head can matter on how much they will enjoy the journey, whether or not it's a good guy or a bad guy, because some of the villains are just fun to read and write for. What A stories are unfinished? And you might land in plot hole landia if you don't leave yourself notes to wrap them up either in this next draft for this project or the next book if it's something that was purposefully left for that. And what are some ways the A stories can fix themselves? Because sometimes they do. And same thing with the B stories. Can their plot holes be fixed, prevented, scrubbed out, taken care of as accordingly? Okay. Now, what I normally do at this point in the hour-ish long workshop, other than asking for questions, is to also offer a sprint. Would you all like a sprint to try and go do some editing type and whatnot related work? Because if so, I can make that happen. And I would say you probably will do most of the same things in the same order from project to project, but not always, and that's okay. I know with my books, scrubbing through this list a couple times myself, most of the time my outsourcing was always my last step, and that's okay. Continuing with the sprint's fine. Let's go ahead and give you all some work time then. I do not mind. Ooh, do I have a sprint screen ready here? I kind of do. I kind of do. We can make that happen, everybody. Ads. Thank you. Correct button. Wrong box, Jenna. All right, everyone. 25 minutes on the clock, and I'll see you all here in a little bit. Rock it out. You've got this. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get ourselves moved on over to a wrap up. We had a really good question there in chat. If you have any others while we're winding down, please let me know. Jody Jean had asked, what do you do when you're ready to send your book to the editor for the second read, but you're not a fan of the draft at all? Saying this as somebody who literally basically had their editor say, Jenna, give me the book now, dang it, before you hit delete. That's kind of where my advice is coming from. Sometimes playing on the phrasing of, if you stare at the darkness too long, you become lost to it. We as writers feel that sometimes when we get into the trenches of editing. So if you feel like you've been walking around in your armor a really, really long time and it's starting to feel heavy, maybe it's time to find a rest spot and take it off, is kind of my hint. Hand it off to your editor or somebody. Give it to somebody. It doesn't have to be a paid editor. Give it to somebody and say, what do you think? What does this make you feel? And you're probably going to find you're not as far off base as you originally intended. Kind of knowing your series the way I do. You're also, when you get into, like, this is the 4th, 5th, 6th, and I'm probably even going to say this might be true for book 13, 14 to 25, 26 of a book series. Sometimes more books just throw you a heftier curveball than others too, unfortunately. And this could just be one of those projects. If you felt like it was much more difficult than the others, then yeah, you think it's time to just hand it over, kind of rip off the Band-Aid. Yeah. That at least was what my editor told me, and it worked. I'm wondering if it'll work here too. And again, if not to an editor, then give somebody the first couple of chapters. Mama Maggie, I was kind of thinking of a conversation you and I had recently as well, based on this too. Sometimes the imposter syndrome makes your imp want to cry. Sometimes you sit and eat chocolate. Yep, sometimes you and your imposter syndrome just have to go all the way out. Yep, you're very welcome. Yeah, sometimes you got to take off that self-editing armor too. If you've been through it a couple times, it might be time. So, with it being time, yeah, if you need some cake, get the cake, all the hugs. And I'm hosting sprints tomorrow night. I will be starting at 9. I have a meeting with my spiritual community, and after the way some things have gone this week, I think I really need to be with some local friends for a bit. So I'm going to go refill my well with them, and then we are on for Heart Breathings for a Double Down Day, and I'll see you all then. February is going to see some interesting things on Tuesdays and Thursdays, especially Thursdays. Starting this coming week or next week. Yeah, this coming week, Mom Maggie and I have mythology research lab that we're doing together. Basically, we'll help you research, but we'll also give you research on a couple of topics too. Miranda and I are getting together about starting a moonology stream one day a week someday, and then also on the weeks I'm not hanging with Mama Maggie on Thursdays, my friend Baka will be back, and we will be co-authoring the Myrna Annals tabletop RPG together. He has a surprise this week. Oh boy, my brother has a surprise. All right, everyone. I shall see you all around. Above all, please take care of yourself. Our voices matter, now more than ever. Dang it.